Hi everybody, welcome to spelling for weeks 1 and 2. So different to last term where we had the core list of spelling words for year 5 and 6, which were really just a list of commonly occurring words that you might come across when you're writing or reading. This term we're going to be working on different spelling rules, and they're going to happen over 2 weeks. So we've got weeks 1 and 2, which will be our first spelling rule, and then weeks 3 and 4 will have another spelling rule, and so on. So it'll work on a fortnightly basis every 2 weeks. Now, usually with spelling rules, you'd be working in your word sort groups. So you might be in the pink group, the blue group, the green group, and so on. To make things a bit easier for myself and for you, we're just going to have the one spelling rule for everybody. Now, I've looked at your spelling results from term 2 all the way back at the end of term 2, and have found sort of the mean or the average area where people seem to be having some trouble, and that sort of kind of came up with unaccented final syllables. Now, some people might be, all across this, and some people might, be working towards this, but I thought this is probably the best place for us to start as a class. So today we are, and for the next 2 weeks, we're looking at unaccented final syllables. And they are AR, OR, and ER. Okay, so for weeks 1 and 2, you've got this word list which has 3 columns, one for AR, one for ER, and one for OR. Now these are all unaccented final syllables on the words in the column. So for example, we've got calendar, ends in AR, cover ends in ER, actor ends in OR. So the sound is just one sound or one syllable. Now what's interesting about these words is that they are an unaccented sound. So for example, with AR, if we normally see that in a word CAR, we would pronounce that car, or in FAR, we would pronounce that far. But with calendar, it has this sound. It's not calendar or colar or grammar, it's grammar. It's got an sound. Same with cover. It's not an sound. We might see that in another word and say, oh, it's like an that's the accented sound. The unaccented sound is the So cover, father. It's not father or flower. Same with actor and editor and doctor. It's not actor or editor or doctor. It's that sound. Now we have a name for that in English, and it's called the schwa. Now it occurs in other situations as well, and it's just this kind of sound. So it looks different to the letters that represent it. We usually have like UH kind of makes that sound, but these 2 letters or these combinations or suffixes or make that sound. Now, I said they're suffixes because they are at the end of a word. So some of these words have rules about when to use AR, ER, and OR because they all make the same sound. In some situations, there really isn't a rule, and that's because English isn't a strictly phonetic language, so it doesn't always follow rules based on relationships between sounds and letters. Sometimes it's based on the history of a word. Sometimes it's just an exception to a rule. There's lots of different aspects to English, so please don't think that there are a single set of rules that covers all of these words. I'm going to go through a few of them now, which might help you, but as you'll see, there are also some exceptions. So let's start with ER, and I've said this is a suffix. It's something we can attach onto the end of a word to change its meaning. And the most common example you'll probably be across is when we're comparing things or in comparison. So I might say something is small, but then I want to compare it with something else, and I want to say, well, it's actually smaller than that other thing, or it's shorter than that other thing, or taller than that other thing. So I'm adding the ER. So that's probably the most common one that you'll be across. Just add ER when we're comparing. We can obviously add EST if it's like the most, but in this situation, we're just saying it's more. Now, this is where we come across verbs which we can change into nouns, and they kind of changed into these agent nouns. So that means that the noun is doing the thing. So let me explain. Here we've got bat, so you might bat a ball, but the person who does that is a batter. Or somebody might cheat in a game. We add er and they've become a cheater in the game. Or they might rap. We add a p and an er because we need that double p to make that a sound. Otherwise it makes an a sound. They become a rapper. So in these situations where there's a single consonant, you can see there's a T or a P or a D or an L, we add ER on the end and it becomes like an agent. So a rapper is somebody who raps. A reader is somebody who reads. Now there are exceptions to this. For example, with the word conquer, we add OR for conqueror. Or counselor, we add LOR for counselor. And a classic one, which some people often get wrong, is sail becomes sailor, but it has an OR. So those are some of the exceptions. This is not an exhaustive list. There are other words that follow this rule and that don't follow this rule. But for the most part, for most words, where it ends in a single consonant and it's a verb, and you're trying to change it into a noun, an agent noun, the thing doing the verb, then you add ER. Another situation is where we have these bossy E words. Now, this is where we've got an E at the end of a word and that it makes a long vowel sound. So bake, it's got an E, makes the A say its name or be a long sound. So it becomes not back or backer, it's bake. And we can just add an R on the end to make baker, so somebody who bakes. I haven't got an R here. Coder is somebody who codes. Hate becomes hater, time becomes timer, and so on. Again, there are exceptions here with supervisor, we have an OR, or survive becomes survivor, but most of them follow this rule up here that you just add R on the end and it becomes an agent noun. So the baker is the person who bakes, the coder is the person who codes. Another situation is where we have consonant blends. So we've got ND making ND sound, or ST making a ST sound, or MP making a MP sound. In these situations, we just add ER. So defend becomes defender, lend becomes lender, protest becomes protester, and so on. Once again, there are exceptions. With invent, inventor has an OR. Invest, an investor has an OR, and sculptor has an OR. But for most of them, we just add ER. So there are exceptions, and you kind of just have to know them. There isn't really a rule for these. But sometimes, the more you read and the more you write and come across these words, then you kind of have word recognition as well, where you're like, that just doesn't look right. Okay, another situation where you add ER to make these agent nouns, so that's a person doing something, is where we have a consonant digraph. Now, a digraph is where we have like 2 or more letters that we combine together to create a unique sound. So C and H isn't K and H, it's a Ch sound. Same with wash, S and H isn't like S and H, it's a Sh sound. So that's what a digraph is. So where we have a consonant digraph and we want to change it into one of these agent nouns like washer or teach to teacher or sing to singer, we add ER. And lastly, some double S words, we add ER. So dress becomes dresser with an ER, kiss, kisser, toss, tosser, trespasser, trespasser. Sorry, trespass, trespasser. Again, just adding ER, and we'll see that these ones you really just have to know because there's a kind of an equal amount of words that end in OR for these kind of situations. Okay, now let's look at OR. Now, don't be stressed if you don't know all of these rules. There are quite a lot of them, but I'm just showing you situations where there is a kind of general rule covering whether you use ER, OR, or AR. Some of your words in your list, or a fair few of your words in your list, are just are more to do with word recognition than following a particular rule because they're more common words, but they don't follow a particular rule. So, words ending in CT. we add OR and it becomes an agent noun. So here act becomes actor with OR, conduct, conductor, direct, director, and so on. So they all, anytime it ends in a CT and we want to make it into an agent noun, like a verb to a noun, so this is a verb act, this is a noun actor, we just add OR. Multi-syllable words ending in ate, like administrate, calculate, generate, we take off the E and add OR. So administrator, calculator, generator. Now you might be like, well, what about hate? Didn't you just say hate ends in ER? Yes, that's true, but it's not a multi-syllable word. Hate is one syllable, like skate, so we just add ER. Multi-syllable words ending in IT as well. So credit becomes creditor, we just add OR. Edit becomes editor. Solicit becomes solicitor, so that's like a lawyer. Visit becomes visitor, and so on. There are a few exceptions like recruiter and limiter, but don't stress about those. And again, here are some of the double S words that end in OR, so assessor, confessor, professor, and so on. So there is no particular rule for that, you just need to know them. Okay, so lastly, we have AR, which is a less frequent sort of unaccented syllable. So here we have beg becomes beggar, burgle becomes burglar, lie becomes liar. These nouns here aren't derived from a verb, so it means they're not taken from a verb, they just exist by themselves. So bursar is somebody who deals with money at a school or at a university, for example, registrar, and scholar. These nouns here all have the unaccented final syllable AR, so altar, calendar, cheddar, dollar, grammar. You will find some of these in your list for this week. These are distinguished from accented final syllable words like, for example, radar. The AR there makes an R sound like in car, whereas raider would be somebody who raids things, and we would spell that this way with an ER. So pronunciation, quite important. In this situation, it's unaccented. This situation here, AR, it's accented. Okay, so here's your word list for weeks 1 and 2. You'll notice that a lot of the words don't actually relate to a verb. So they're not a verb becoming a noun, like becoming an agent noun. There are a few of them though. So we've got lie becomes liar. We've got teach becomes teacher. Act becomes actor. And edit becomes editor. I didn't want to have a full list of just agent nouns because I think it's really important that you learn how to spell these other words, which you're more likely to come across than just situations where profess becomes professor, hate becomes hater, and so on. So it's really important that you learn these words because they are kind of recognition words. Not all of them follow a particular rule. But it's the main thing, I guess, for this week is to understand that AR can make this sound, and so can OR. It can make the schwa sound. You'll be quite familiar with ER, like in the word bigger, smaller, taller, shorter, mother, father. But AR and OR can also make that sound. So it's knowing when to use the correct letter combination to make that sound at the end of a word. All right, any questions, feel free to send me a message or ask me over our class Zoom. Make sure you do your activities for this week. There are 3 days worth of activities for spelling, and there'll also be 3 activities for next week. All right, take care. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.